Well, it has been kind of a stressful week for a lot of us outdoor creators here on YouTube. There's a new law that took effect in October that requires commercial filming permits. There's a lot of ambiguity about the law. It's not very clear, when you have to apply for a permit and when you don't. A lot of creators, myself included, have made videos on the subject, and there's just a ton of information out there. And unfortunately, not all the information is accurate. So that is just kind of adding to the confusion and adding to the stress. To combat that a little bit, my good buddy Ghost Mule over at Everyday Backpacker and I decided to have a little bit of fun tonight, to lighten the mood a little bit. So we have decided to share with you our top 3 most embarrassing moments from the trail. It has been kind of a rough week here on YouTube. A lot of videos floating around, a lot of misinformation floating around. Everybody's kind of freaking out here and there. And I think to some degree, a lot of people are freaking out on purpose, like maybe just for clicks and likes. But I thought tonight it would be super fun if we lightened things up and just shared some really embarrassing personal stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I personally, I just can't believe that people on YouTube and social media would do things just for the sole purpose of getting likes and follows.
It's
I just
crazy
can't
talk.
believe
I've
myself.
never heard of a thing like that in my entire life. So,
No.
all right. So the plan for tonight is very similarly. If you saw our last Ask a Backpacker episode, we're going to go back and forth telling some stories. Tonight's stories are all embarrassing things that have happened to us on trail. So, Ghost Mule, why don't you start us off with your first embarrassing story?
Looking back, I was amazed at how many of my embarrassing stories seem to revolve around bodily functions, mainly pooping in the woods. And I'm guessing that I'm not the only one. So, admittedly, a couple of those are probably going to be pooping in the wood stories, but I do have at least one that doesn't involve that particular thing. So, but let's go ahead and get started. And I will pick my first kind of embarrassing pooping story. And this one was actually featured in one of Dixie's videos, believe it or not. I wrote into her Instagram and shared the story, and she included it. So, this is kind
You're
of
like a
my,
YouTube rock star.
yeah, she didn't use my name, but, I knew. So this was actually on my first ever really big backpacking trip. So when I was 18 years old, just a little pup, in 1997, I went to a place called Philmont Scout Ranch, which is part of the Boy Scouts. It's in New Mexico in the Santa Crista Mountain Range. And we had a 10-day long, 100-mile backpacking trip that we did while we were out there. And, interestingly enough, the latrines there, so you don't actually, most of the time, don't actually dig holes when you're there, especially when you're camp. They have pit toilets. But unlike most pit toilets, there are no walls. It's just a box in the middle of nowhere with 2 holes cut in the side, the top of it, side by side, and it's just open air, and so you get to enjoy the beautiful view while you're dropping a deuce. And you would think that maybe they would hide them off in the bushes, but oh no, 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 no! It's right next to the trail, like 5 feet away from it. So you're right there, and I'm sure this made a lot of sense. When Boy Scouts was Boy Scouts, as is now Scouts. However, the year before I went to Philmont, it became co-ed because they were now allowing explorer posts to come into the to the Scout Ranch, and so it was chock full of boys and girls of varying ages and mostly in our teens. And so one morning I get up and I walk up the hill to where the trail was and the box was, and I dropped my pants down around my ankles and started to do my business. And they gave us this little like pamphlet that was like yay big, and daily reading things. And I'm reading out of that, and I start hearing voices coming up the trail, and it dawns on me right before they pop over the hill that these voices are quite feminine in nature. And I quickly took my little pamphlet and I dropped it down just big enough to cover up my dangly bits. And sure enough, this group of about 20 teenage girls just hopped right over the trail, 5 feet away from me, and I'm in mid operation and I can't stop. And so all I could do is look over and go, "Hey, how's it going? Nice morning." And lots of giggles ensued. And as soon as they were down the other side of the hill, I quickly picked up what was left of my pride and headed back down into camp.
Wow, that's your first story. That's number one. Okay. Uh, at, wow, that is embarrassing. No questions asked. So my first story does not involve poop. I'm saving the poop story for last because it is an excellent poop story. So stick around for that. You're going to want to hear it. So my first story happened on a PCT section hike. I was hiking roughly a 100-mile section of the PCT over a few days, and it was kind of right at the height of thru hiker season, like when the thru hikers were just getting into the Sierras. So I met a ton of different thru hikers and got to hear their stories and all this stuff. And there's this one dude that I walked with, and we walked probably 40 miles together, and camped at the same spot, shared meals together, all this stuff. We were having fantastic conversations and like really becoming like friends, like on the trail. And his name was Josh. We're hiking along, and for 72 hours, I hiked with this guy over the course of about 40 to 50 miles, and called him Josh for 40 to 50 miles. At where we were departing, I was turning off onto a section of the Tahoe Rim Trail and heading down into Tahoe City. He was continuing north all the way to Canada. So we sat next to this log and this little bubbling brook and had some lunch, refilled all our waters, and had another fantastic conversation. And when it was time to go, we stand up and shake hands and all that good stuff. And he goes, "Oh, hey, by the way, I didn't want to say anything earlier." He's like, uh, "But my name's not Josh."
Oh, God.
It was John. For
He just
for
looked you up.
72 hours. For over the course of like 50 miles, I called this dude the wrong name, and he did not correct me until I had to go now live with this information and walk another like 18 miles alone, just dwelling on the fact that I had just called my new friend the wrong name for 72 hours.
Oh, and you know that your brain is going to just completely just put that on replay and just like bore into your psyche.
That was 4 years ago. I still think about that dude every day.
I think I came up with a new trail name for you, Jim. I think
Oh
trail
no.
name tag.
All
I'm
right,
I'm just
I'll take
kidding.
it.
You don't have to use it. Name tag.
Oh. All right.
Trail names
Time
have
for
to
your
happen.
second story.
All
What's
right.
that?
So I said trail names have to happen on trail anyway, so you're safe.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. All right. So my second story is going to be the non-poop related story. Since you're going to end on a poop story, I should go ahead and end on a poop story. So this one, although not poop related, does involve a brown sticky substance. And in this case, it was
I don't
mud.
like where this is going.
Just mud. And so yeah, so this was one of those classic moments where and of course these are the kind of moments that happen when other people are around. And so we had to do a stream crossing, and the stream was kind of like running through this really boggy area, and our choices were to go either through a stream and do a really precarious rock hop, or kind of go a little bit a ways around and be able to jump over the stream and using like larger kind of chunks of land to kind of get across. But the bad part of that one was just past the hop portion was a big just quagmire of muddy water. It was just like stagnant, thick, pasty, nasty, like all of your nightmares combined. And I thought, well, I can make it over that initial jump. and then I can make the second jump to get over the quagmire. And so this is my plan. And uh, I decided to go for a bit of a running start. And as I jumped and I cleared the stream and I hit that little island, I tripped as my second leg came across, and it propelled my body
Oh
forward,
no.
which normally is not an issue, but I have a 35-pound pack on my back. And all that momentum just shot straight up, and it pile drove me face first right into the mud, just like lawn darted right into the mud.
Oh.
And I mean, I was covered, like everything, like just like looked like Swamp Thing coming right out of the mud. And everybody is just laughing hysterically. And I think I had mud in my every part of my face through the entire trip. Like I just could not get clean. And it just smelled
Oh.
so bad. And so,
Oh.
yeah, nothing like being the fearless backpacking guy and just lawn darting yourself into the mud.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That is just like full on like mosquito factory mud.
Oh yeah, like, and it shot up my
Oh.
nose and my mouth. Like, one of the guys had to go in there and dig around to find what was left of my glasses. It was.
Oh no.
No, fortunately, they didn't break, but I mean, like, you just couldn't get it cleaned off, and like,
Oh.
so yeah, yeah, probably should have got a tetanus shot after that one, but it is what it is. Mud tastes really,
All right.
by the way.
Oh, that sounds terrible. All right. So my second story is even though I'm saving the poop story for last, this is the one I'm most embarrassed about because, I put out YouTube content which a lot of people assume that makes me kind of an expert in the field or to some degree or another. And so this happened 2 years ago, which is not far enough into the past, in my opinion. It was my dog Kiki's very first backpacking trip. We went to this place called Emigrant Loop, and as the name would imply, it is a loop. Now, it's not like a planned loop, if that makes sense. Like the trail isn't designed to be a loop. It's a series of interconnecting trails that people have just sort of created a loop from.
Okay.
And so it's a loop, right? So I'm taking it pretty casual. I've got a map with me, but I'm not using like my GPS or anything like that because it's a loop. Like, how hard can a loop be, right? So we get to camp, and I just had this sinking feeling that I was in the wrong place. So I break out my map. I'm looking at my GPS thing. I'm looking at the map and trying to line up like what I'm seeing on the screen of my digital GPS to what I'm seeing on this paper map. And I've convinced myself that I'm at the right lake. I'm like, okay. And that you can even watch this. There's a video of this trip up on YouTube. And I cleverly edited the video so that this story is not part of that video.
There is no.
And now here I am confessing it. So in the video, I talk about, oh, okay, this is the lake. This is where we are. Everything's fine. So we get up in the morning, and I need to mention, just as a side note, this area at this time of the year had the most mosquitoes I have ever seen in my entire life. It was horrific. We were just getting annihilated by mosquitoes. So when you're in that kind of state of mind, you're getting all these, external stresses. You're not always paying as much attention as you should. So we do this really deep, like waist deep river cross, which Kiki loved. She's swimming around. It took me 15, 20 minutes to even get her out of the water. She was having so much fun swimming. And I see kind of the remnants of a trail marker. And I'm like, oh, okay. So this is where the loop hooks back because reading the all trails, which first mistake, trusting all trails. Don't do that. In all trails, it talks about this kind of disheveled trail marker, and then that's where you loop back to the parking lot. So I find this broken, very disheveled trail marker, and I'm like, okay, so this is where we loop back. We got 3/4 of a mile up that section past that trail marker, and then the trail just stopped. There was nothing. And I'm like, okay, you know what? We're still heading in roughly the right direction. We'll just bushwhack it and get back to the car. So I walk maybe another mile, just bushwhacking it and going in relatively the right direction. And lo and behold, we find trail. I'm like, oh, cool. This is the trail. So we start walking on the trail. And I shit you not, I end up at the exact same river crossing.
Oh, things you never want to happen on a backpacking trip.
Yeah. So I built like a loop within a loop. And now I'm right back where I started. I managed, as an experienced, well-traveled backpacker, I managed to get myself lost on a loop.
That is impressive. There weren't any like groundhogs like hiding off in the distance, like lapping or anything, where they Bill Murray didn't show up and play a piano or anything.
No, that would have made it a little better at least. But I mean, it was unbelievable. And like, I wasn't going to share this part because it's so embarrassing. To make matters worse, I took off across the river again, take off. I pass the first broken trail marker, find the next one, which is supposedly the one back to the parking lot. I ended up at the same river crossing a third time. I just turned around. It became an out and back. It didn't even bother trying to find the rest of the loop. I just did the whole thing as an out and back. I was so embarrassed.
That's it. I'm out.
I was done. Like Kiki's looking at me like, this is what we're doing, Dad. This is fun. Like,
yeah, there's nothing worse than being embarrassed in front of your own dog, too. Oh man,
right? And especially like a new dog. Like we were still fostering her at the time. We hadn't like officially adopted her yet. So you get to see the look on her face, like this is where I've ended up. This is great. Thanks.
She's thinking like, okay, great. This guy just took me to the same river 3 times. What kind of life is he going to be able to provide for me?
Which she loved that part. That was the best day of her life. Like she's like, oh, we're going swimming again. This is fantastic.
This is the best day.
Why are you so mad, Dad? What's going on? Why are you so upset? We're swimming. This is great. Yeah. So there we go. Seasoned backpacker, got lost on a loop twice.
Well, you know, there's 2 types of people, or 2 types of backpackers in the world: those that have gotten lost, and those that lie about
it. I like that. That's a good one.
It works for lots of different things. All right. So, I guess this is the final one here, right?
Yeah,
so,
this is it.
There's a couple really good ones I could pick, but I think for me, it was the most immediate sense of I have royally screwed up and I can't believe this just happened at the same moment in time. So this also starts off with us making a wrong turn. So we were hiking up into Sundance Pass, and you get to the base of the pass, and there's a bridge, a very well-made bridge that crosses. And the path up the pass goes to the left, and then there's another path that goes off to the right. And we were going to go camping up to the right, which is you go up the stream a little ways, and there's a lake there called Shadow Lake. And we get in there, and we take this path in, and all of a sudden the path stops, and it stops in this giant snow-covered rock field that goes right into the river, and there's no way around it. And so we have to like try to figure out how to get across and everything, and it's sketchy as all get out, and we get to the other side, and we get to this really beautiful meadow at the base of Whitetail Peak, and this is also in a video, but I don't talk about it. And I look across the lake, and I realize that the space where we're supposed to be is on the other side of the lake. And so you're supposed to not take the bridge. You're supposed to go over this boulder field that's not marked at all. And then the trail is beyond the boulder field, and we totally messed that up. So we're like, shit. Well, you know, it's a beautiful spot. We'll make the best of it. This isn't even the embarrassing part yet. We had a whole fiasco with putting up the bear bags because it's grizzly country. We ended up having to go all the way around the lake again to the other side to hang our bear bags, and then come back around because we were going to hang it from a boulder. but a marmot actually started chewing through our bear bag line, so we couldn't do that.
Oh no.
And so, anyways, it's the middle of the night, and now, mind you, again, we set up on the opposite side, and we could see tents from other people that had camped in the area that we were supposed to be in on the other side of the lake, easily, 200-300 yards away. And so we had our side to ourselves, and they had their side to themselves. And in the middle of the night, I get the rumble, and I have to go number two. It's not gonna stop. And mind you, the reason why we couldn't hang a bear bag is there was no trees or vegetation anywhere. It just as far as you could see. And so I'm like, shit, like I can't even like hide somewhere. So I pop my head out, and it's completely dark. There's no signs of life anywhere. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I run away about 200 feet away from my tent, and I dig a cat hole right in the middle of this field. And I'm like, okay, it's no big deal. And so I squat over this cat hole, and I'm sitting there, and I'm dead staring across the lake to where this tent is. And all of a sudden I see a headlamp come on across the way. And I'm like, oh, I was like, no way. Seriously? They're out of their tent? It's like 2:00 in the morning. What in the hell? And the light starts like panning. It's like a searchlight
Oh
almost at this
no.
point. And all of a sudden it just goes right onto me, like full on, like I'm caught deer in the headlight, full on, like, oh dear Lord, I'm being abducted by aliens, just like right in my face. And I am pants down, dangling in the breeze, full view. And it just sits there for a few seconds. And I'm like, and it's like, and finally the light turns off, and you distinctly hear laughing coming from across the
Oh
lake.
no.
And I realized that, oh yeah, they saw. So once again, I finished my job, picked up what was left of my dignity, and rushed back to the tent.
So our third stories have some similarities. My my third story happened on Mount Whitney. It was the first time that my buddy Brian and I summited Whitney. And for those of you who don't know, Mount Whitney, you have to use a wag bag. And if you don't know what a wag bag is, it is literally a bag that you poop in, and then you have to carry your waste out and dispose of it down at the trailhead. They have these biohazard dumpsters essentially, which is really gross in and of itself. But
That would
it's
be out.
yeah, I mean, and it's so many people. I mean, the day we summited, we were like 77 and 78 for the day, and there were still people coming up behind us. So we made really good time from the portal to the campground right at the base of the 99 switchbacks. So we got up there right around lunchtime, and we set up our tents and ate lunch, and we were relaxing quite a bit. And we decided, the original plan was to get up at like 1:00 in the morning, and the whole camp, everybody that was at camp, we're all going to go up and do like a headlamp summit together. And we were sitting there, it's only like noon, and I'm like, hey man, what if we just went now? Like, what if it's just you and I just cranked it up there, and that way we're not standing in line and hiking up there with like 15 other people. Let's just go do it right now. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do it. So we threw together some day packs, cranked up, and like everybody's telling us, oh, that's a terrible idea, you're not going to get back to camp until after dark. And jokingly, I was just like, you know what, we'll be back before 7. And get up, have a successful summit, got back to camp at 6:59, which was like a huge, I'm just like, see, what's up now? Who's going to get back after dark? We were a minute early. And so we're sitting there, we're getting our dinners ready, and nature starts to call, like while I'm boiling my water and stuff. So I grab my wag bag, and like the camp is packed. There's easily 15 other groups that are 2 and 3 people each group, right? So I mean, there's just tents everywhere. There's no vegetation at that elevation. You're well above the tree line. And so I'm like scrambling, like to find a place to lay my wag bag down. And this is the first time I've ever used a wag bag. I've never had to do that before. So I was already like a little nervous. time was on my side a little bit because the sun had started to set, so I could like find like a dark corner behind like a boulder or something and do my business, which I did, and everything was successful. I got it all in the bag, nothing broke, nothing spilled. It was a fairly successful event. And then as I'm wrapping up and getting the wag bag back into
Absolutely.
its own little gallon Ziploc bag, I stand up and my headlamp catches something unnaturally shiny. Like, when you're up on granite rocks and like there's little bits of quartz and things like that, and you're like, oh, that's a boulder, that's another boulder. This was nylon, without question. And to my horror, there were two completely black sleeping bags on completely black sleeping pads, cowboy camping maybe 5 feet away from where I had done the deed.
Oh my god.
And I don't know. I don't know if these people saw anything, but if they did, they saw everything. But they were for sure in their sleeping bags. Like, no question. I turned around, my head hit their sleeping bag, and I was just like, I'm just going to go drown myself in the lake. That's the only possible answer at this point. There's no way I'm living this down. Like, I just have to go take a midnight swim, and then that's it. This is where it all ends for me.
Oh god, that's horrifying. That's worse than
Oh
any shitting in a switchback story I've ever heard.
God.
Oh my gosh. I just
as
imagine
as
you like,
embar-
go ahead.
as embarrassing as this was for me, and as horrifying as that story is to tell, imagine being the people in the sleeping bags.
Oh my god. I'm just imagining you like hurrying off, like, just mentally damaged and all. And then like the person like rolling over to the other person going, did that guy just shit in our camp?
It was so wild. Like,
You
I
only
oh,
hope that for their sanity that they were both just so sound asleep that they had no idea it even happened.
I hope they were, and I do know that before we got up to the campsite, there had been discussion amongst all the other campers that they were going to do this headlamp trek up the 99 switchback. So everybody was planning on being awake at like midnight 30 or 1 o'clock in the morning. So like I hope upon hope that they were just in a dead ass sleep, getting ready to wake up in a few hours to summit. But like I say, man, if they saw anything, they definitely saw everything. And it would have been, not to get too crude, but they would have had like the absolute worst angle that you could have in that situation. Like they would have just seen, they essentially would have seen what a toilet would see if it had eyes.
I hate to make the terrible Star Wars parody reference here, but I just imagine you're sitting there doing your business and the guy's like all groggy, like, look, the moon. And the other person's like, that's no moon. Okay, yeah,
Oh,
that is horrifying.
yeah, just, and like I say, like as embarrassing as that is for me to tell that story, every time I think about that, I'm just like, oh, imagine just imagine being the poor people in the sleeping bags.
So I don't know
Like
if we
what an
should
awful.
I don't know if we should do a runner up, but one of the stories I was going to tell is surprisingly similar to that, but it fortunately for me did not involve a human being, but I definitely traumatized a woodland creature once, and like, found this like perfect like spot to do my business. Like there was a log, like, a foot off the ground, like I could sit on and just, dig, and I'm just sitting on this log and I'm looking out across the valley and it's like really nice. There's a nice little breeze and everything. And you ever get that feeling when you just feel like you're being watched?
Oh yeah.
I get this feeling like there's something behind me and it's watching me. And I'm like, so I slowly turn around and I look down behind me and there's this poor squirrel like holding a nut just looking up at me like completely transfixed, and I just was like, "Sorry, little buddy." I don't think it moved the entire time. Like I finished up and I covered up everything and I took off. I'm pretty sure that squirrel's still there, just like poor thing, just trying to eat his nut. Man.
Oh, the poor guy. All right, since we're doing runner-ups, I have a good runner-up story.
All right.
This also surprisingly happened on a PCT section hike. Along certain sections of the PCT, there are pit toilets if you're very lucky. And I happened to come across a pit toilet at exactly the right time. I was just like, oh, my stomach's doing the grumbly thing. There's the pit toilet. This is going to be perfect. And there's a thing that happens when you're through hiking where you kind of lose all sense of shame or dignity at a certain point. If you've been on trail long enough, you're just like, whatever, no one cares, right? And so I'm walking up to the pit toilet, and there's two doors. I try the first one, it's locked. I go to the second one, it is not locked, but it is occupied. And this poor woman sitting there she just looks up at me and she goes, "Oh fuck," and I just closed the door and walked away.
Occupado.
Yeah. It was just like, but you could tell like the look on her face, like, "Oh, I didn't lock that." But instead of, "Oh, I didn't lock that," she just looked at me like right in my eyes and just went, "Oh fuck." And I wandered off into the woods and dug a cat hole because I was not going to stick around and have the rest of that conversation.
That is definitely a moment when you don't need a follow-up, meeting with the same person. Like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, no.
All right.
Like, yeah, you just like hope upon hope that they are going like southbound so that you don't have to ever see them again.
If they aren't, they are now.
Right.
Well, turn around. We're going home.
That's it. Yeah. Trip's over. We're done. Oh. Well, that was fun. I'm really glad we did this. That was a much needed moment of levity, I think, after kind of a stressful week. So I hope everybody watching enjoyed as well. And we'll see you all on the next one.
Have a good one, everyone.